The melody from Etude No. 3 from Chopin is one of the most simple and beautiful things you can imagine. I think the reason why Chopin loved it so much is because it's so poetic, so singable. It's one of these masterpieces where the piano becomes the extension of the human voice. It is very close to his nocturne genre, and perhaps also to Mendelssohn's Songs Without Words. The persistent melodic motif that we will hear also reminds me a bit of the equally beautiful piece from Ravel, Pavane pour un enfant défunt. I want to show with this analysis how Chopin manages to synthesize many of his greatest qualities in a subtle and highly idiomatic pianistic way. But first, let's have a listen to the main melody of the A section, accompanied by a harmonic analysis. The core idea and melody is remarkably simple, yet represents a subtle synthesis of Chopin's best qualities as a composer, such as a highly original handling of non-chord tones, cantabile melody, polyphonic and contrapuntal treatments, harmonic and structural deception, yet not over the top, textural novelties, especially in the middle section that we won't discuss here, detailed handling of tempo and dynamics that support the expressiveness of the singing line, clever elaboration of sequential material, masterfully handling of the dissonances and other ornamental notes on specific key moments, and scarce modulations. The first thing I noticed when visually analyzing this score is the similarity to Beethoven's Adagio cantabile structure, the second movement of Beethoven's Pathétique. You can find an analysis of this piece on my Patreon. There are three distinct elements here: the melody, the middle voice accompaniment, and the syncopated bass line. Simplicity is perhaps one of the great achievements from Chopin's music. Some of the most beautiful things in music are in essence built on very basic structures, that is, a compositional idea of highest importance. To demonstrate this, I created a harmonic reduction, which is also downloadable for patrons. You see the melodic line, reduced to notes belonging to the functional harmony, and the syncopated bass, with lots of pedal voices. Notice how this harmonic reduction represents nothing special, if you look at the harmony solely. It's most basically tonic and dominant relations, and occasionally a subdominant or a secondary dominant. The magic happens, of course, in the melodic handling of chord and non-chord tones. An anacrusis or an upbeat, with a fourth jump. One of the most easy and idiomatic ways to start and sing a classic melody. The first melodic contour contains a simple 1-2-3 Do, Re, Re, Mi melody, while the bass goes Do, Sol, Sol, Do. Those who are familiar with Robert Gördingen music in the Galant style will recognize the Do-Re-Mi pattern, a pattern that is omnipresent in Baroque, classical and romantic music. Chopin might not have directly thought of this in this way, but clearly his melody follows this simple and strong structure. In Mozart we can find many examples all the time. And we all know Chopin was a big Mozart fanboy. This strong structure is disguised by the many well-placed non-chord tones. neighbor tones, and sustained notes, leaving out the strong beat, an anticipation to the dissonant G sharp, resolving to the 5th F sharp on a weaker beat, before finding its first endpoint on G sharp, which acts as a consonance to the tonic. The melodic idea is then shifted a tone up, where it creates a 4-3 suspension on the tonic before jumping to the very expressive 9th of the dominant. This 9th is reached by a 4th leap, making it less harsh, yet incredibly expressive. Moreover, the 4th leap makes it very singable. The C sharp resolves to B, but very late, so that it actually forms a continuation of the phrase. You see, basic melodic ideas, but with a slightly romantic and seductive Chopin touch. Notice the ascending contour of a major 6th, an interval perfectly in reach of every person who can hum or sing a bit. In the descending line, Chopin dodges F sharp by means of a leap from G sharp to D sharp. This leading tone resolves to E and then to the chord tone F sharp on the dominant. Chopin creates tension by creating this melodic gap. Our ear desires to hear the F sharp of the dominant, which is delayed but given eventually. Notice how during these first 4 measures the accent of the melody is almost always halfway the measure. Now something quite unusual happens. The phrase is continued and does not stop at this half cadence, creating an asymmetrical structure of 5 bars containing the expected half cadence in bar 4, but moving directly into a perfect cadence in bar 5, with the dominant in syncopated harmony. Chopin keeps using the melodic motif to resolve F sharp to the tonic E. We are now 5 bars in. Chopin beautifully extends the melody with this figure. In it, we can find a so-called double neighboring tone, around the 3rd G sharp, followed by the same principle on the subdominant, by means of a rising melodic sequence. The last 3 bars move from tonic to a half cadence and represent a contraction of a 4-bar phrase. Notice the welcoming repetition with the grace notes to create comprehensibility and a new flavor. The overall structure of the first melodic phrase is thus 5 plus 3 bars. I created a separated PDF where I label every ornamental note of the melody in the A section to illustrate its function and place in the total phrasing. This PDF is also available for contributing patrons. The middle voice forms a nice contrast with the melody, which is not too fancy as to not attract so much attention and let the melody shine. Chopin handles a technique famous from Baroque and Classicism called latent polyphony. I'll demonstrate this by reducing the first 2 bars. You see how the middle voice represents 2 voices instead of 1. This latent polyphony becomes more pronounced in bar 3 and 4. Later in bar 4 and 5, Chopin deviates from this idea to create more variation and introduces an oscillating 3rd texture, quite a fresh sound. Interestingly, the A and C sharp are dissonances resolving on the weaker beat to the tonic B and leading tone D sharp respectively. Using these neighboring dissonances on the strong beat is something which Chopin does all the time. Later the A, which is the 7th, neatly resolves. Chopin must have liked this harmonic game and continues with the dissonant D natural over the bass E, unprepared this time. This creates secondary dominant function of the subdominant. It resolves neatly. The second scale degree, first inversion, is a bit stronger than the subdominant. This creates again a syncopated bass line with the A twice in a row. However, Chopin jumps to the expressive C sharp and accents the F sharp on the weaker beat, so we still get a lot of movement. So what chord is this? Well, you could view this as a dominant with a suspended 4th E that doesn't resolve directly. However, there is another way to analyze this. Notice this delicate counterpoint. Pedal voices on F sharp and E, while the bass line and alto/tenor move in a contrary motion. That's the main takeaway here, I think. We could view this chord as a passing chord moving into the double dominant, resolving to the dominant here. That sus4 on E finally finds its resolution here. And this is how Chopin keeps us waiting in suspense. Create expectations, don't give them immediately, but then give them a bit later. The melodic phrase of 5 bars is repeated, but now Chopin will extend it to a climax embedded in a 7-bar phrase. So 5 plus 3 and then 5 plus 7. How does this structure fit in the synthesis of ideas that I talked about before? Well, I believe it has similarities in function to the use of secondary dominance and prolonged suspense. We expect in bar 4 to start on a tonic, It does not happen, but later. We expect a regular 16-bar phrase, but it does not happen, and it finishes way later in bar 21. This reinforces the desire, the longing, and the overall expressiveness of the melody. Chopin extends the melodic fragment and uses the same harmony as bar 6. Notice, however, that the melody is a third higher and there is an additional middle voice, thickening the texture, again a fresh sound, to avoid a simple repetition. The second half of the bar is the same as in bar 6. But Chopin then shifts everything a third higher, creating tension with the secondary dominant of the 6th scale degree. He builds more tension by working up his way melodically, using the double neighboring note idea in a dramatic fashion. This chord is the double dominant 7th in second inversion. He then goes from E to F sharp on this very dissonant French augmented 6th chord. Notice how the melody is doubled in octaves to add drama, while A sharp acts as a pedal voice that begs for a resolution. Also notice how he uses the same idea of prolongation from before. The secondary dominant does not directly resolve to the dominant. Instead, the highly dissonant and expressive French augmented 6th builds these expectations further by delaying the resolution. The climax is reached with the signaling function of the dissonant cadential dominant chord. So it's not even the dominant in its usual form. Notice how the melodic line reaches its high point perfectly on the climax. Chopin cuts the bass line on this peak moment, but then he does something very smart. Instead of resolving to the regular tonic, he creates a downward sequence, coupled to a weak deceptive cadence, keeping us yet again in suspense. This is one of the most beautiful moments in his music, in my opinion. The melody is shifted a third down, and the bass line follows this pattern of descending thirds into an incredibly touching plagal cadence, with a third in the top voice. The third strangely resolves a bar later. It almost sounds like the resolution was not meant to happen, like the melody almost forgets to resolve. It's almost too much, if you know what I mean. Like you are so starstruck by something that you become very confused and forget for a moment everything. But then, life goes on. So where are the modulations? Nowhere. There are no modulations at all. I love to show these kind of things to my students. I'd say, look at Chopin and what he does with so little. A couple of tonics and dominants, a secondary dominant, and a handful of recurring melodic motifs. That is craft and beauty.